Hello everyone, this is Skadoosh and welcome to a quick video I'll be doing on all the major changes in patch 0.2 that affected my two builds, the Corrupting Cry and the Decompose build. I could go over everything, but I feel like it's not really necessary and you can watch other videos or just read the patch notes yourself if you want. I'll also have in the background, you can see I have some planning for a potential build that I'm league starting, and I'll go over that as well if you're interested. First thing, many skills have had their base damage and or growth reduced per level or rebalanced, and this is one of the major changes that's going to affect Corrupting Cry specifically, because totems scale extremely with levels. Like on my current Corrupting Cry character, I have a level 40 Ancestral Warrior totem, and if scaling changes drastically, it means our damage is also going to drastically change. There is obviously some options I've got that are coming with the new build, like Botter Shout and stuff. That's going to be interesting and 100% going to make Corrupting Cry a really good league starter, but the single target might suffer. Fully broken armor now causes enemies to take 20% increased physical damage. That basically just 20% more damage for our totems, which kind of makes up for the fact that we're not getting 20% extra shock from Ball Lightning and Lightning Warp anymore. So that's something to consider. This massive change here to Warbringer's Ascendancy, the Warcry's Bellow Ascendancy, blah 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 blah. Basically, our Warcry skills, passives, such as Warcry Area Effect, should scale the area of effect of the fizz explosions from the corpses. So that'll be massive, because those corpse explosions kind of are really tiny when they explode. But if it works how we think it's going to work, they're going to be massive now, because you get over 100% nearly AoE with just Warcries alone. Turtle Charm Ascendancy passive skill now has 20% less block from 35%. Basically, it means we get more block with less investment. So we can hit that 65 cap with Svalin much easier. And we also probably can save some passive points or jewels, because we specifically need to save jewels right now because of this change down here. 12 jewel sockets have been removed. So you can assume we lose half of our jewels basically, which means we can't as easily block cap. But every build loses this, so it's not really something that nerfs my build specifically, it just nerfs all builds. Pathfinder got some new changes. No real impact. I mean, you could take the no, you can't be slowed node now instead of the 30% less movement speed penalty when casting, but you'll come to realize there's no point even considering that yeah, it's pretty bad for the Decompose build. Acrobatics Keystone passive skill now less evasion rating, just a nerf. Now you have even less evasion rating, and hitting that 50% threshold on the Decompose build would be even harder. Polymath Notable passive skill grants 7% increase of attributes instead of 10. That's this attribute down here. Polymathy will give 7, so it's a bit less attributes on the Corrupting Cry build. I wouldn't say it's too significant, but it's an amount. The mana cost of all attacks, marks, and Warcries has been reduced, most notably at higher gem levels. This can be extremely significant for Warcries, mainly because they cost so much at high levels, and we're using Inspiration just so we can barely be above that threshold where we're not killing ourselves. But if this reduces it significantly, we will now start regenning life much more easily and with less gear with Urgent Call. So if it works that way, maybe we can even run high level Infernal Cry for some extra explosions, but we'll see. Ancestral Warrior Totem now explicitly says that it wields two-handed mace. This didn't really change anything. It just means like nodes like this, for example, would work, I guess, in theory. Even though when I tested it, I felt like it didn't, but who knows. But specifically, we now have 2 seconds from the quality instead of 0.2, which was so weird that it only gives 0.2. So this is a massive duration boost to our totems. I think it goes from 8 to 10. So it's about 25% more duration, which is really nice. Decompose from the Corpse Weighted Boots has been nerfed and slashed by half. So it went from 39.5 or 40% at top end to 19.5 at top end. And it also means the base version If you get like low level boots, it's only 10%. So you can't, there's no point using them for leveling at all. You kind of need to scale them. But there's more to it than just this, unfortunately. One of these is Despair. Now causes cursed enemies to have 20% chaos resistance instead of, or up 20% into up to 24% instead of 36%. So that's 12%. And that's effectively 12% less damage on our builds. I think it's actually more than that, because if you reduce resistance on an enemy, it has more effect than if you go below 0. And since most monsters are probably going to have above 30% chaos resistance, it was quite significant. So that's going to be a damage nerf as well. Gas Arrow, Gas Grenades, and Decompose now have a limit of 6 Poison Clouds. For single target, this wouldn't matter. We really didn't have 6 Poison Clouds normally up at any time. It's basically impossible because we had 3, and then we refreshed with 3, so you can maybe have 6, but the first 3 would go away pretty quickly. But for clearing, you now won't have lingering Decompose Clouds. Again, would this really matter with Contagion? Probably not. I don't think it would matter that much. Grim Feast deleted, which, I mean, fair enough. It was OP. It was OP. What we'll use if you still want to play Decompose after all the nerfs I just mentioned, you would replace Grim Feast with Alchemist's Boon, I think it's called, which gives you Flask charges. Because Flask would be basically our main way to gain back Energy Shield on that build, which would be actually quite good with Eternal Youth, so that we can sustain our life flasks even when we cap out on Energy Shield. If you have multiple travel skills on cooldown, the cooldown is now shared. This means you now can't use Blink and Shield Charge. You can't combo these. Usually you would Shield Charge and then Blink right afterwards to cancel the end lag animation of Shield Charge, but you can't do that anymore, so just pick one of them, I guess. Seismic Cry no longer has increased Warcry speed. This sounds kind of bad. Basically, Infernal Cry still has this, but it had 38 up to 38 increased Warcry speed baseline. But it still has 40% increased Warcry speed on the quality. So it will still have 40% as part of the quality. It's definitely a nerf, but I don't think it's that significant. And if it is, we can just get more Warcry speed on Jewels. And yeah, I think pretty much just on Jewels. But in the end of the day, we don't really need to spam our Warcries more than necessary to get 10 stacks, right? Our DPS doesn't go up with more Warcry speed. But I guess it would feel better in maps. Sacrifice now has minions revive more slowly. Technically, this doesn't actually matter for us because of the bug, I guess, that makes it so that our skeleton brutes don't summon or don't care about the summon delay as long as it's a weapon swap, right? But maybe they fixed that now, and this is one of the things that's going to, in fact, if they fixed it, it's going to be terrible, and you're going to have to invest into minion revive speed on the tree, which means you're going to lose damage. It's just going to be bad. If it doesn't, then this doesn't matter. Skeletal Brute quality now causes brutes to inflict more stun build out instead of increased maximum life. I don't know why it says increase, but I guess increase was local, so it was basically a 20% damage loss, because 20% more life meant 20% more damage from our poison clouds, so we lost 20% damage here. Withering Presence got buffed, so it lasts 6 seconds, so we apply a bit more Wither, nice, which actually is relevant later on, because we can't apply Wither with Eye of Winter anymore, unfortunately, because of it won't do. We basically were doing like 1 or 2 chaos damage with the way it was working out, which was enough, because that was enough to do Withering Touch because it was doing chaos damage. But now it scales with how much chaos damage it does on Withering Touch or with the skill, so it probably won't apply Wither at all anymore. So that basically Eye of Winter is a dead skill now for applying Wither, and we'll have to go back to using Essence Drain or something, for example. Brutality now causes Sporting Seal to do 25% more physical instead of 35%. It's a damage nerf to Corrupting Cry, because this is one of the few gems we can actually socket in there to increase the Corrupting Blood damage. So that's unfortunate, but we'll live with it. We'll live with it. I'm sure we'll get some other tools, so I don't think it's that bad. Meat shield support now grants minions support skills 35 less damage taken instead of granting them 4 more life, 50% more life. That's 50% more damage that we lost. So we basically lost a support gem. That was a 50% support gem, which is really significant, on Decompose. You can see that the nerfs are stacking up. It's bad. Against the Darkness Jewel now has medium radius. This is very significant. So if we go over here, check against the darkness. So this is the radius as it's currently. Radius large, you see that? Or I can put it, let's just put it here actually. Because we have that on our Warcry build. And you'll see that it covers our couple nodes here, covers these nodes, right? And I think we should be able to change this to medium. Yep. Boof. So now, this probably isn't in range anymore. Ancestral Mending probably isn't in range anymore. Unbreaking isn't in range anymore. Bravado isn't in range. Finality is still in range. It's not, and Unwavering Stance not in range. Oh, that didn't matter. So we can't get Vengeance anymore. We weren't really getting Bravado, so it's fine. We can't get Finality anymore. Maybe Ancestral Mending's in the area. How do I check? It doesn't seem to work, unfortunately. Oh, it's a small passives. Only, so we change this to Damages Chaos, for example. It is in range. Okay, apparently it's not that big of a nerf actually for us. It means we can't get Unbreaking anymore. So we don't get Unbreaking, but you still get pretty much everything in here. So it's not too big of a nerf. Anyway. So that's what's happening to Tyrmos. And it also is going down to 3% instead of the max 4% it had before. Which probably means it maybe can go to 4% with the Corruption. But yeah, so it's a nerf to both builds because they both were using this jewel. Ingenuity build got dumpstered. It got nuked. I don't think you use this on any build anymore. Morris Invictus also got nuked. You probably don't use this. Well, maybe there's some edge cases, but not for our build specifically, where we wanted attributes in the max life. So you're not using this anymore on Corrupting Cry. Probably, I put in the 30% strength chest that blocks regen. I can't remember what it's called right now. Actually, no, I have it right here. The Titan Rod Carafract, but losing life regen is pretty bad. And you also lose other stats. So hard to say, maybe just use a rare chest. So I think maybe just use a rare chest. Slight nerf to Breach Rings. It's like 10% quality. I don't think you use Breach Rings anymore. I think normal rings are just better in overall because you're not running Ingenuity. Max Null Shield is dumpstered. And Rarity Cores are deleted. So no more of that on the Rarity set. Last but not least, Scepters can now only run +4 minion skills instead of +5. So another nerf to Decompose. As you can see, that was pretty significant. But, oh well, that's fine. I don't mind. Nerfs are part of the game, and nerfs shakes up the meta. So I'm happy, honestly. I mean, the fact that Corrupting Cry is still viable and probably one of the better League starters right now, that are at least known, it's good enough for me. But keep in mind, nerfs are fine. Nerfs fine. Maybe it's possible to get Decompose working again once someone finds a Spectre that has a lot of life. If we can find a Spectre that has a lot of life, or there's some cool new supports that somehow you can add into Decompose and add it to the minion skill, then maybe we can make Decompose work. We gotta keep in mind that Decompose was doing like 20 mil maybe top end damage on really good gear, and it's about an 80% less damage nerf from my calculations, rough. So if 2 mil or 4 mil damage is enough to do the game, then maybe it's viable, but you need a shit ton of gear. You would need a shit ton of gear. All right. Okay, on to the build. I wanted the league start. I got this idea from a guy called Xantho PoE. I'll have a link to his YouTube in the description. And he had a build called Righteous Fire at Home, but it was basically just Resonating Shield with Armor Explosion. And he did it on a Gembling and with like heavy reliance on Herald of Ice, which really isn't going to be good anymore. So I kind of reconfigured it into the new Smith of Kitava Ascendancy on a warrior. Now the main idea behind this build is Resonating Shield with Armor Explosion, and then you get damage. I think momentum works, and you get a lot of armor break on the tree. Pretty much get all the armor break on the tree. And with all the armor break on the tree, Resonating Shield will be able to proc armor break pretty much instantly on the first hit, and this will then cause Armor Explosion, which will then do enough damage to probably kill everything that it hits. Now, if it doesn't kill, or we need more clear, or maybe we didn't reach something, we then have one of the skills from the Ascendancy, the Fire Spell on Hit, which I put in here. I kind of had it in Cast and Ignite, but where we have Detonate Dead and Exploit Weakness, and probably some other supports. And when we kill something, or when we hit something, I guess, and it procs our Cast Fire Spell on Hit, it will cast Detonate Dead, exploding anything we kill, which will then proc Exploit Weakness, which will remove the armor from enemies. This means that Resonating Shield can then destroy the armor of the enemy again to then cause Armor Explosion again. So basically it's kind of like a feedback loop there. And of course we still have either Infernal Cry or Seismic Cry. I haven't decided yet, we'll see how that plays out, with the new Batter Shout gem to allow us to get rid of armor as well if nothing dies from the first explosion. So that would be a good way to do clear, I think. And with the help of the the Feathered Fortress Crescent Targe, it has the line no movement speed penalty while shield is raised. This means that when we use Resonating Strike, we're running at max movement speed. So this, for example, using momentum isn't a down detriment because it's holding the skill, we're moving at the same speed as we would be doing anyway. So we can just walk around, slamming our shield, exploding everything that we touch. That's the idea. Now, of course, that is not going to be enough for single target. So for single target, instead, we are using Sunder. Sunder's doing decent damage here. We got 1.04 mil, 2.6 total damage of one hit. Obviously, DPS is kind of low because Sunder is a slow attack. But because we break armor, it means that we can get crit nodes everywhere to guarantee a crit with Sunder. So we can get all this crit nodes on our second weapon set to get all this damage, and which isn't useful for our first set because we're not critting with the Resonating Shield and Armor Explosion, but we are with Sunder. And so we can get all these nodes for free basically because we don't need to spend points between, or we can split the points between the sets because I like my weapon sets in my builds. And it also means we can run block because of the new Black Steel Tower Shield. This gives us up to 75%, or you can technically get more if you get more block chance or more maximum block, but for us it'll be 75% of block or of damage as extra fire damage, which is a real nice damage boost. And it's a shield we still have, so we get a bit of defenses from it. And another great thing is that because of that, we can run offensive stance as well as lay siege to get an extra 150 free damage global. Remember, this will all scale Detonate Dead as well. So Detonate Dead will actually do damage. It did get nerfed this patch, but we're just using it for clear, so it should be more than enough. And because of that, we can now have more damage while having block. But you might have noticed that Black Steel Tower Shield doesn't really have that high block chance. It's only got 26. And the only block wheel that I have that gives more block is this here. The reason that works is because we travel all the way over here to get glancing blows. Glancing blows doubles our block chance, but we take 50% damage from blocked hits. This is fine because we are the blacksmith of Kitava ascendancy, which means we have 90% max res, everything due to unnatural resilience and having capped fire res, which then caps all the other res. So we'll be pretty tanky, and because of the new chest piece, so we have this is a white chest piece. It looks yellow here, but it's actually white, and it has the regen 5% of life per second and 25% of physical damage taken as fire from the ascendancy. And we basically get this for free, right? This is just an item we get. This is a lot of regen once we have this equipped, and we also take a bit of physical damage as fire. And the nice thing about this is that it means our armor gets more effective because we take less physical damage. It means the armor can be more effective against that smaller hit, because the bigger the hit, the less effective armor is. So if we reduce the size of that physical hit, it means our armor is better. So we get a decent boost. I mean, obviously armor is still kind of questionable in Path of Exile 2, but it's going to be enough to keep us alive. And that's kind of the build. If you, obviously, I'll post this, I guess, in the description. I might have updated it a couple times, we'll see. If you're interested, it's not really a proper build guide or anything, and I'd highly recommend, you take this with caution. I have no idea, it might not work because of something, right? Maybe cast fire spell on hit is terrible and it never activates. So it's hard to say. It's up to you if you want to league start the same thing I'm doing, but I will be documenting obviously my progress and tell you if it's good or not by the end of when I get to end game. So all right, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.